One day, God realized that the more humans multiplied, the more they sinned beyond redemption. God regretted creating humanity, so he decided to destroy all seeds of evil in the world with the Great Flood. At that time, there was a man named Noah who was upright in heart. God could not bear to kill him and told him in a dream of his intentions. God advised Noah to build a boat so large that it could hold all his family members along with all the animals, but only one pair of each animal could be brought. Listening to God, Noah began to build a giant boat divided into 3 floors. Once completed, he put all the animals on the boat, only one pair of each species. When the boat was finished building and all the animals were on board, suddenly dark clouds gathered, covering all sunlight, creating a gloomy, scary scene. In just a blink of an eye, the rain began to become intense. Water from the abyss below began to flood everywhere. The water rose rapidly, carrying everything in its path. The entire creature seemed to be submerged under the raging whirlpool of water. This great storm lasted for 150 days and nights, higher than the highest mountain peaks. The mountains that once stood proudly for centuries are now just small peaks undulating in the sea. And that was the world's first apocalypse. Humanity paid the price for all its sins before the power of God. Noah's Ark is the ark mentioned in chapters 6 to 9 of the book of Genesis in the Bible. It describes how Noah built this ark according to God's will to save him and his family and the animals from destruction by the Great Flood. It was a huge ship, 14 meters high, 137 meters long, and 23 meters wide. The ship has no rudder and looks like a giant box because its purpose is not to drive anywhere, but just to float and survive the terrible flood. For a long time, this ship was still considered fictional, until many people believe it was found in Mount Ararat, Turkey.
These salt crystals were found at the 14,000-foot elevation.
We took this photograph of the rectangular object we believe to be the Ark of Noah.
Today, we will go back in time to know the truth about the arks of God during humanity's first apocalypse. It all started when Adam and Eve listened to Satan and committed treason against God. They were the first 2 people created by God, living in the Garden of Eden. They are given absolute freedom, but must also obey a single rule. They cannot eat fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Everything seems perfect until they are seduced by Satan, the terrifying form of the angel who fell into sin. Satan entered the Garden of Eden in the form of a snake and used sweet words to entice Eve, saying that if they ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge, they would open their eyes and become like God. Even though they were warned by God about the consequences of making the mistake, Eve and then Adam still chose to eat the forbidden tree. From there, we know how to distinguish and judge everything in the world. Their act of rebellion against God brought serious consequences. They were kicked out of Eden, isolated from God, and had to work hard to make a living. Since then, humanity has faced suffering, hard work, and death, which are all consequences of original sin. In ancient times, there existed many civilizations that were not recorded in the limited history of human. There are civilizations where human lifespan lasts hundreds of years. And like all other civilizations, after a long period of time humanity experiences ups and downs in life. People gradually lose their way. They seem to only worship people with status and wealth. In the magnificent cathedrals of the city of Samarra at that time, there were monks who lived lavishly, preaching morality day and night, and plotting in political games. They pride themselves on successfully building paradise on earth without God's intervention. Instead of believing and following God's words, most people under the guidance of the clergy are worshiping strange gods, hoping to receive power and material things and satisfy worldly passions. They become too careless, no longer know what is right, and no longer have the time or mind to learn about it. Noah and his family are one of the few good people who still believe and follow God's teachings. He wanted to share his faith with everyone, but it was difficult because people only admired the achievements of modern civilization, with its magnificent buildings and unprecedented material comforts, without believing in anything. Noah's virtue helped him meet and talk with God many times. He still remembers God's shaking head and majestic voice that day in the Olive Garden. There will be a great flood throughout the earth, and all living things under heaven will be destroyed. I will wipe off from the face of the earth every human being that I have created, not only human beings, but also all animals and the whole world, for I regret that I have created them. At that time, Noah was enlightened. He knew that humans needed to realize that if they did not change their lifestyle and become better, after 50 years, they would be wiped out from this world. God's mercy has given them a great opportunity, and they must grasp it. However, when Noah met each person and tried to share that startling truth, he only received suspicion, estrangement, and ridicule. The adults laughed, and the children threw rotten eggs and tomatoes at him. Noah still calmly endured without showing anger. Despite those ridicules, he still went into Samara every day to preach the word of God. He accepted all suffering and humiliation, hoping to make people understand the situation and change for a better life. Whether the great flood happens or not, it is still the right thing to do. But no one believes that. After a year of working hard in the forest to cut trees to build an ark and find wild animals, Noah felt defeated when he made no progress. During that pessimistic moment, Noah himself also began to wonder. He did not doubt his God, but he did not clearly understand the meaning of the work God had given him and why he had to carry it out with his own hands. After it was completed, dark clouds arrived, thunder rumbled, and rain began to fall, ending Samara's dry period. People in the city were happy to welcome the rain because they thought the weather forecast was correct. However, the rain continued for many days without stopping, water overflowing into every house. Residents ran into the streets like rats leaving a shipwreck, while thunder and lightning and torrents of water poured down from above. Remembering Noah's Ark, the chaotic crowd ran towards the ark. But the ground shook and cracked, making it impossible for them to reach the ship. Noah's family and the animals were safely on the giant ark. Noah now knelt down to pray as the ship emerged, rocking on the rough waves. The ship drifted away, completely entrusting itself to God's arrangements. When he opened the door of the ark, he witnessed a terrifying scene. Tens of thousands of people crowded onto the mountain. Everywhere is a dead bodies, groans, and cries. The ark floated in the vast sea and sky for many stormy nights. One morning, Noah opened the door of the ark and looked out. The rain had stopped, the sky was overcast, and there were no signs of life left. Only the vast surface of the water remained. In 1959, Darupiner, then a Turkish army captain, discovered an unusual shape while examining aerial photos. The object is larger than a football field and stands out from the mountainous terrain at an altitude of nearly 2,000 meters in the Ararat Mountains near the border between Turkey and Iran. This is a remote area inhabited only by a few small villages. Before that, there had never been any reports of this strange object. Captain Derupener sent the aerial photo to Dr. Robert of Ohio State University. After studying the photo, Dr. Robert concluded, "I am certain that this object is a ship. In my entire career, I have never seen an object like this." Impressed by the above story, in 1977, researcher Ron Wyatt visited Mount Ararat, where the ship was said to lie. With permission from local authorities, Ron Wyatt and his friends thoroughly researched the area for many years. They used metal detectors, radar scanners, conduct careful exploration, and perform chemical analyses. In the first part of the study, scientists examined the object and measured its size. The object looked like the hull of a large ship, with one pointed end and another wrapped around, like a tail. The distance from nose to tail is nearly 160 meters. On the hull section near the stern, there are 4 branches protruding from the ground, evenly spaced, identified as the frame ribs of the hull. Facing them on the port side, there was a rib also sticking out of the ground. There are many other frame ribs around, most of them buried in the soil. Upon close inspection, the ship's wood can be seen to have been fossilized. Organic substances have been replaced by minerals, leaving only the shape and traces of the ship's ribs. This ship is located in the middle of a dry mud stream. Based on the position of the ship and the mud flow, it can be clearly seen that this object was swept away with the mud flow about 36 kilometers away from its original location. Geologists believe that the ship was originally located about 300 meters higher than the current location and was covered in a layer of hard mud. They believe that in 1948, an earthquake broke through the hard mud shell, revealing the ship. This was also confirmed by the surrounding villagers.
There's been a tremendous earthquake. There's been a great crevasse created here, a big avalanche, and the Ark has split into 2 pieces. And this is what is being seen today.
Scientists use ground-penetrating ultrasound waves to identify objects below the ground. This technique is often used to locate petroleum and other minerals. The device to do this is called GPR, ground-penetrating radar. Geologists marked yellow tape around the object, then scanned along these lines to collect data for analysis. After analyzing all the data, they built a map of the object and what lies below the ground. Analysis results show that this structure does not correspond to natural geological formations, but is artificial structures. This also shows the wood structures inside the ship's hull. Using a metal detector, Ron Wyatt discovered a compartment on the starboard side of the ship. He drilled into this gap to take samples and collected very interesting artifacts. Perhaps the most important and surprising discovery to come from the scene was the fossilized piece of wood. When it was first found, people thought it was a simple piece of wood from a ship's deck. However, upon closer inspection, it turned out that this piece of wood consisted of 3 different planks that were curved and fastened together with an organic glue. This is very similar to how we make plywood today. Plywood is much more durable than regular wood, proving that ancient people possessed a very high level of technology. Examination revealed glue oozing from the specimen's outer wood layers, which were once covered with a layer of fossilized asphalt. Even more astonishing, traces of iron nails were found inside this extremely ancient piece of plywood. People are often taught that humanity went through the Stone Age and the Iron Age, and that the Iron Age is placed more than 3,000 years ago. Yet here we have iron nails stuck inside the fossilized plywood panels of a giant prehistoric ship. The most astonishing specimen was discovered thanks to metal detectors. The team has identified several locations where the signal is strongest. After digging up, they found large rivets with a special shape. When we observe, we can see the flattened ends of these rivets. After leaking through the holes, analysis was conducted to find out what metal was used to create those rivets. The results showed that this rivet contained 8.35% aluminum and titanium. However, because only metal has not rusted, the original composition of this strange alloy remains a mystery. According to legend, the research team's discoveries shocked Turkey. The Great Flood is mentioned in the Bible, and the legend of Noah's Ark is associated with this event. Today, there is a lot of evidence confirming that in the past there was a terrible global flood. The Great Flood has been recorded as a historical event, or at least a myth, by many different peoples around the world. The Great Flood, according to the Bible, was created by God to destroy humanity because humanity at that time had lost its conscience and morality and was no longer worthy to exist. These stories leave a mark in the subconscious of the ancients about a great and horrifying flood in history. The existence of Noah's Ark has been denied by many modern people. However, during the Middle Ages, the story of this ship's resting place was quite famous and recorded in many different historical documents. The historian Nicholas of Damascus, in the 1st century AD, referred to Mount Ararat with Noah's Ark stuck on top of it. The author of the famous book, The Travels of Sir John Mandeville, at the end of the 14th century, mentioned many stories about Noah's Ark located on the top of Mount Ararat. The explorer Adamo of Bremen in the early 17th century also mentioned Mount Ararat in his work. In the year 1943, during World War II, 2 American pilots discovered on the slopes of Mount Ararat an object that looked like a large ship. Pilots of the 428th Squadron of the United States Air Force photographed an object resembling a large ship on the slopes of Mount Ararat. After that, a professor at the Gentleman University of Science announced for the first time that the object in the photos was Noah's Ark. On June 20, 1987, the Turkish government recognized the ark-shaped object on Mount Ararat as Noah's Ark. However, this event was ignored and hardly any media mentioned it. To date, the question of this silence is still a mystery. The existence of the legendary Noah's Ark means that what is written in the Bible about God's punishment and the Great Flood most likely happened. This is something worth pondering in an era of increasingly degraded morality. People no longer believe in God, and nature and the living environment are seriously destroyed. Will God continue to let people do bad things or destroy them to regenerate a new era? In the legend of the Great Flood and Noah's Ark, all evil people are destroyed. Only righteous people like Noah are dreamed by God to escape the disaster. If you have any thoughts about the story of Noah's Ark, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.